The road home is a creature of habit, much like myself. For 50 years, it's been the same 2 lanes of cracked asphalt winding through the Maryland woods, a gray ribbon tying my small house to the rest of the world. At 70 years old, you learn to appreciate ribbons like that. They represent consistency in a life that has been anything but. My name is Arthur Jensen, but no one's called me Arthur in half a century. The United States Marine Corps saw fit to brand me Gunner back when I was a kid with more muscle than sense, and it stuck. My late wife Sarah was the only one who ever used my given name. She'd say it softly, like a secret, a reminder of the man I was underneath the calluses in the uniform. Now with her gone, I'm just Gunner to everyone. A relic from a time of sharp uniforms and even sharper orders. That Tuesday began in a haze of mundane routine, the kind that settles over a man living alone. A trip into town for groceries, where I nodded to faces I knew but names I'd long since forgotten. A stop at the VFW post for a cup of coffee that tasted more like tradition than caffeine. Shared with a dwindling group of ghosts who, like me, still woke up from nightmares setting jungles half a world away. And then the drive home in Old Blue, my 1998 Ford F-150. The truck, much like its owner, was past its prime with more rust than shine, but it was stubbornly, defiantly reliable. It had never failed me. The sun was warm, a benevolent gold filtering through the canopy of oak and maple trees that lined the road, painting a shifting mosaic of light and shadow on the dashboard. I was thinking about Sarah's recipe for shepherd's pie, a simple comfort I'd been chasing for the better part of a decade. Hers was perfect, the potatoes fluffy, the meat rich and savory. Mine always came out functional. It was the love, I suppose, that was the ingredient I was missing. That's when I saw it. Up ahead, where the road curved gently to the left, the familiar pattern of the world was broken. The dance of light and shadow on the pavement was wrong. It wasn't the fleeting shade of leaves. It was a lumpy, chaotic collection of shapes that spilled from the green grassy shoulder onto the blistering asphalt. My first thought, a grim reflex honed by a lifetime of expecting the worst, was a multi-car pileup. But there was no glint of twisted metal, no plume of black smoke, no shattering sound of glass. There was only a profound, unnerving stillness that seemed to suck the very sound from the air. I eased my foot off the gas, Old Blue's aging engine humming a low, concerned note as it decelerated. As I drew closer, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the shapes resolved into individual forms: fur, paws, ears, tails. My heart, a steady, 70-year-old drum, gave a painful, violent lurch like a misfire. It wasn't a car wreck. It was bodies. Dozens of them. Dogs. I pulled the truck over, the tires crunching on the gravel shoulder with a sound that felt obscenely loud in the dead. Quiet. For a long frozen moment, I just sat there, my breath caught somewhere in my chest, my mind refusing to process the tableau before me. It was a battlefield, a silent, brutal, incomprehensible massacre. They were everywhere, scattered like fallen leaves after a storm. German shepherds, their noble, intelligent profiles rendered slack and empty. Siberian Huskies, their striking ice-bee blue eyes sealed shut against the world. A pair of golden-brown Labradors lying so close they looked like they had been trying to comfort each other in their final terrifying moments. Black dogs, tan dogs, brindle dogs, mutts and purebreds alike. They lay on the hot, unforgiving asphalt and the cool, indifferent grass with a terrible, unnatural peace. The Marine in me, the part that never truly retires, took over before the old man could fall apart. Assess the situation, Gunner. Control your breathing. Analyze the threat. I pushed open the truck door. The familiar groan of the hinges a jarring intrusion into the silence. I swung my legs out, my worn leather boots making a soft thud on the ground. The air was thick with the scent of summer dust, sun-baked pine needles, and something else, a faint, cloying chemical odor I couldn't place. It tickled the back of my throat. My gaze swept the scene, counting automatically. A grim inventory of souls. 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, 16 dogs. Were they gone? All of them. The sheer waste of it, the malice was a physical thing, a black weight pressing down on my chest. I moved forward, my steps measured. I knelt beside the closest one, a magnificent German shepherd, whose black and tan coat was still glossy in the afternoon sky. His head was turned at an odd angle, and nestled right by his muzzle, half hidden in the grass, was a small white egg-shaped object. I looked around, my eyes scanning the area with renewed focus. Nearly every dog had one nearby. They looked like marshmallows. No, they were too dense, too smooth. They were like strange, chalky stones, alien, and sinister. The bait. My training taught me to look for signs of life. Ignoring the protest of my aging knees, I pressed 2 fingers against the dog's neck, searching for the carotid artery, for any flicker of a pulse. There was nothing, but still cooling flesh. My stomach twisted. I moved to the next, a sleek black mutt with 4 perfect white paws like he'd stepped in paint. I watched its chest, my eyes burning with concentration, willing it to move for a full 10 seconds. There was nothing. Then a flicker, a shallow, barely perceptible rise and fall. It was so faint I thought I had imagined it. I held my breath and watched again. There it was, a tiny, desperate movement. He's alive. The thought was a jolt of pure adrenaline, a lightning strike to my system. Hope, fierce and desperate, flared in my chest. I scrambled from one dog to the next, my movement suddenly urgent, the pain in my joints forgotten. It was a battlefield triage on a front I never trained for. Here, a husky's ear twitched in response to a fly. There, a small tan dog let out a whimper so faint, it was more a vibration I felt through the ground than a sound I heard. They weren't all dead. Not yet. But they were fading fast. Their breaths were shallow, their bodies limp. Poison. It had to be a fast-acting, vicious poison delivered in those innocent-looking white packages. A cold, black rage. An emotion I hadn't felt with such unbridled intensity in years coiled in my gut. This wasn't a tragedy of nature. This was an execution. What kind of degenerate, soulless monster does something like this? To creatures whose only crime is to trust? My hand instinctively went to my breast pocket for my phone. It wasn't there. I slapped my other pockets. Nothing. A fresh wave of panic, hot and sharp, washed over me. I'd left it on the kitchen counter, plugged into the charger. Of course, the 1 day in 1,000 I forget the damn thing. I was utterly alone out here. This back road was a shortcut few people used. I might not see another car for an hour, maybe more. By then the faint signs of life I was seeing would be extinguished. I looked at the field of broken trust and fading hope. Then I looked back at Old Blue sitting there on the shoulder, solid and dependable. The Marine Corps' motto is Ser Fidelis, always faithful. It's a fine motto, but the unspoken creed, the one that's tattooed on your soul in boot camp and seared into your brain in combat, is simpler. You never ever leave a man behind. It doesn't matter if they're breathing, broken, or gone. You carry them. You honor their sacrifice. You bring them home. These weren't men. They were dogs. But to me, in that moment, the distinction didn't matter. They were soldiers in a war they didn't start, casualties of a cruelty they couldn't possibly comprehend. And I was the only friendly on the field. "All right, you magnificent bastards," I muttered, the words raspy in my throat. I was talking to the dogs, to myself, to the ghost of Sarah, to whatever. God might still be listening. Looks like it's on me. We're getting you out of here. The plan forming in my head was insane. My back was a roadmap of old injuries from parachute landings and years of hauling heavy gear. I was 70 years old. Loading one 80 lb dog would be a significant challenge. Loading 16 of them ranging from 40 to nearly 100 pounds. It was a logistical and physical impossibility. And yet the alternative to leave them here to die one by one on the side of the road was unthinkable. It was a violation of everything I was. I walked to the back of Old Blue and lowered the tailgate. The clang of metal echoed in the quiet woods. The bed was mostly empty, save for a dusty, faded blue tarp and a tire iron. I folded the tarp and placed it in the corner, trying to make as much room as possible. The first one I went for was the black mutt, the one that had shown the first definitive sign of life. He was a medium-sized dog, maybe 40, 50 lb, a manageable start. I knelt, positioning myself. "Lift with the legs, gunner, not the back." I heard my old drill instructor yelling in my memory. Easy for him to say. My legs weren't what they used to be. I hooked my arms under the dog's chest and his hind legs. He was completely limp, a dead weight that felt twice as heavy as he looked. Lifting him was a grunt and heave affair that sent a bolt of fire up my spine. I staggered the few feet to the truck, my arms shaking with the unaccustomed strain, and gently, so gently, I laid him in the bed. One down, 15 to go. The sun was relentless, beating down on the back of my neck. Sweat began to bead on my forehead and sting my eyes. I worked methodically, a grim determination settling over me. I moved from the road to the grass, creating a clear path. A beautiful tan-cold dog with a dark muzzle, possibly a Malinois mix. A brindled dog that looked like it had some pit bull in it, its powerful muscles gone slack. I developed a system. Kneel, position my hands, brace myself, lift with a controlled explosion of effort, and shuffled to the truck. Each one was a monumental task. My breathing grew ragged. My shirt was soaked through with sweat. The Huskies were heavy, their dense double coats adding to their bulk. As I lifted one, a magnificent gray and white male, he let out a low, mournful groan. His eyes, a startling clear blue, flittered open for a fraction of a second. They were clouded with pain and confusion. He saw me, a strange, sweating old man, hauling him away from the only spot he knew, and he whimpered, a sound of utter betrayal. "I know, buddy," I whispered, my voice strained with effort. "I've got you. Just hang on. I promise I've got you." I placed him next to the others. The bed of my truck was becoming a tragic, overcrowded ark. It was a tapestry of fur in every color and texture: black, tan, white, brindle, gold. They lay in a heap, their bodies a silent collective testament to the horror that had unfolded on this quiet country road. Around the 8th dog, my body started to stage a full-blown rebellion. A sharp stabbing pain shot from my lower back down my right leg. A familiar agony from an old sciatic nerve injury. My knees felt like they were full of ground glass. I had to stop. I leaned heavily against the side of the truck, gasping for air, my vision swimming in a dizzying haze. For a second, I thought I was going to pass out right there on the asphalt. The voice of doubt, the insidious whisper that tells a 70-year-old man he's no longer the 20-year-old Marine he remembers being, began to snake its way into my thoughts. "You can't do this, Arthur. It's too much. You're going to have a heart attack and die right here next to them. Then what good are you?" I closed my eyes, and through the pain and exhaustion, I saw Sarah's face. She wasn't smiling. She was looking at me with that look she had. The one that was equal parts love and exasperation. "You're a stubborn old goat, Arthur Jensen," she would say, her voice clear as a bell in my memory. "The most stubborn man God ever saw fit to create. But you're a good goat. Now get on with it." I pushed myself off the truck, the metal hot against my palm. "Shut up," I told the voice of doubt out loud. "Just shut up and lift." I turned my attention to a cluster of them near the edge of the woods. Among them was a German shepherd, smaller than the others, a puppy really, maybe 6 or 7 months old, all gangly legs and oversized ears, his coat still soft and fluffy. He looked like he was in the middle of a clumsy growth spurt. As I reached for him, he stirred more than the others had. His head, lifted weakly off the ground, his brown eyes wide with a primal terror that tore at my heart. He let out a tiny frightened growl, a rumble that was more a vibration than sound. "Easy now, son," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "The way you'd talk to a spooked recruit. I'm on your side. I'm here to help." Fear, I know all too well, doesn't listen to reason. As my hand slid under his body, he reacted with the only defense he had left. He snapped. His puppy teeth, sharp as needles, sank into the fleshy part of my left forearm. Pain, white-hot and immediate, flared up my arm. I cried out, a short, sharp bark of surprise and agony. My first instinct was to drop him, to recoil, but I didn't. My grip tightened. I held him there, his teeth still clamped down, and looked directly into his terrified eyes. I didn't see a vicious animal. I saw a scared kid, cornered and hurting, lashing out at the first thing he could reach. I saw a victim. "I know," I said, the words coming out in a pained grunt as blood began to well up around the pressure points. "I know you're scared. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe." Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't strike back. Slowly, as if he understood, the pressure on my arm eased. He released his grip, his head slumping back down onto my arm, the last of his energy spent. He was, just a baby. I looked down at my forearm. 4 small, perfect puncture wounds were weeping dark red blood, which began to drip onto the dusty ground, making little dark circles in the dirt. There was no time to deal with it. The clock was ticking. For all of them. I carried the pup to the truck and laid him down as gently as I could, placing him in a small space near the cab where he wouldn't get crushed. The sight of my own blood mixed with the grim reality of the situation sent a fresh surge of adrenaline and pure uncut fury through me. I was no longer just tired. I was running on something older and more primal. I ripped a strip of cloth from the old tarp, wrapped it tightly around the bite, and went back to work with a grim determination that bordered on obsession. The last few dogs were a blur of pain, sweat, and sheer willpower. A golden lab whose fur was like silk. Another shepherd, this one a female with kind, soft eyes that were now closed. A small, wiry terrier mix that couldn't have weighed more than 20 lb. He felt as light as a feather after the others. Finally, there was only one left. He was one of the largest, a massive German shepherd who must have weighed close to 100 lb. He was lying on the sun-baked asphalt, his body absorbing the relentless heat. He was the one I checked first, the one I thought was already gone. He represented my final, most difficult obstacle, my last mountain to climb. I knelt beside him, my entire body screaming in a silent chorus of protest. "Okay, big fella, you're the last passenger on this train. Let's get you home." Getting my arms under him was a struggle. His sheer size and limbness made it almost impossible to get a good grip. Lifting him was agony. Every muscle, every joint shrieked. I saw stars behind my eyes. For a terrifying second, I thought my legs would buckle and I'd collapse on top of him. But I locked my knees, straightened my back as much as my battered body would allow, and began the shuffle. Step by agonizing step, I moved him to the tailgate. With the last ounce of strength I possessed, a final desperate surge fueled by nothing but will, I heaved him up into the truck bed. He landed with a soft, heavy thud among his fallen comrades. It was done. All 16 of them were in the truck. I stood there for a long moment, leaning my full weight on the tailgate, my chest heaving like a blacksmith's bellows. My arm throbbed with a deep, pulsating pain. My back was a solid wall of fire. I was covered in dirt, dog hair, sweat, and my own blood. I looked into the bed of Old Blue. It was a scene from a nightmare, a tangle of limbs and fur, but they were all there. I hadn't left a single one behind. Now I just had to get them to help before the clock ran out. The nearest veterinarian was Dr. Evans over in Clarksville. On a good day, it was a 20-minute drive. 20 minutes felt like an eternity. I climbed into the cab, my movement stiff and slow like an old man's. The makeshift bandage on my arm was already soaked through. I turned the key. Old Blue's engine roared to life, a comforting, familiar sound in a world turned upside down. I put the truck in gear and pulled out onto the road, driving with an almost comical amount of care. Every small bump, every gentle turn felt like a major event. I imagined the dogs jostling in the back, and I winced with each one. I started talking to him, my voice, a low rumble in the cab, filling the silence. "Hang on, just hang on now. We're almost there. We're going to get you some help. You're good dogs, all of you. You hear me? You just hang on for old Gunner." I don't know if they could hear me. I don't know if it made a difference to him, but it made a difference to me. It kept the panic at bay. It kept me focused, and kept me from thinking about the possibility that I was too late. When I finally pulled into the parking lot of the Clarksville Animal Hospital, I practically fell out of the cab. I staggered toward the front door, my legs unsteady, leaving a small trail of blood droplets on the clean pavement. I burst into the waiting room, a sight I'm sure the receptionist, a young woman named Brenda, with kind eyes and a name tag, will be telling her grandkids about someday. "I need help," I gasped, leaning heavily on the counter to keep from collapsing. "My truck, dogs, lots of them. I think they've been poisoned." Brenda's eyes went wide. First at my disheveled, blood-streaked state, then at the crimson-soaked rag on my arm. She was on her feet in an instant, her professionalism kicking in. "Dr. Evans," she yelled, her voice sharp with alarm. "Code 3 in the parking lot." Dr. Anna Evans was a woman who embodied calm competence. She was in her 40s with a kind face framed by dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that had seen more than their share of tragedy and triumph. She came out from the back, wiping her hands on her scrubs, her expression concerned but composed. She took one look at me, then her gaze went past me out the plate glass window to Old Blue. Her professional calm flickered for just a second, replaced by a look of sheer unadulterated disbelief. "My God," she whispered. She didn't waste a second. "Brenda, call Dr. Miller. Tell him to cancel his afternoon and get here now. Kevin, Maria, I need all hands in the parking lot. Gurneys, IV kits, activated charcoal, atropine. Move, move, move." Her clinic, usually a place of calm appointments and the gentle murmur of anxious pet owners, exploded into a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Technicians and assistants came running from every corner of the building. They swarmed Old Blue, their faces a mixture of shock and grim determination. Dr. Evans was right there with them, directing the effort like a field general taking command of a desperate battle. "Let's get them out quickly but gently. Check vitals. Check vitals on every single one as they come out. I want IV lines started immediately before they even get inside. I want toxicology panels run, but for now we assume it's a fast-acting neurotoxin. Let's push fluids and hope for the best." They worked with an incredible speed and efficiency. There was a thing of beauty to watch. One by one, my precious heavy cargo was lifted from the truck bed and placed onto gurneys, carried gently into the hospital. I could only stand and watch my part in the physical rescue over. I felt a profound sense of helplessness, the same feeling I'd had 100 times before on other bloodier fields, standing by while the medics work their magic. Your job is done. Now all you can do is wait and pray. Dr. Evans came over to me as the last dog, the big shepherd, was being wheeled inside. "She let me see that arm," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. She led me to an exam room, sat me down on the cold metal table, and carefully unwrapped my makeshift bandage. She cleaned the wound with an expert's touch, her expression unreadable. "A puppy did it," I said, my voice. It felt important that she knew. He was scared. He didn't mean it. She looked up from my arm, her brown eyes meeting mine. "You loaded 16 poisoned dogs, some of them very large, into your truck by yourself, while bleeding at 70 years old." I just shrugged, a gesture that sent a fresh wave of pain through my back. Had to be done. Couldn't leave him. She finished bandaging my arm with sterile gauze and tape, her touch surprisingly gentle. "What you did, Mr. Jensen, what you did was extraordinary. Just call me Gunner." And I was just doing the job that was in front of me. I spent the next 4 hours in that sterile waiting room nursing a cup of hot sweet coffee Brenda had made for me. The clinic was a hive of activity. I could hear hushed, urgent voices, the beeping of heart monitors, the occasional pained bark or whimper. Every sound was a sign of life. Every sound was a small victory in the war we were fighting. Finally, long after the sun had set and the sky had turned a deep indigo, Dr. Evans came back out. She looked bone-weary. Her scrubs were stained, but she was smiling. A real tired but triumphant smile. "Gunner," she said, slumping into the chair across from me. "It was touch and go for a few of them, especially the little ones in the pup. That got you. The poison was a potent organophosphate, a type of pesticide, vicious stuff. It was mixed into meatballs. Those white things you saw were the congealed fat. But we got to them in time. Your timing. You got them here in time. We pumped their stomachs, flooded them with fluids and antidotes, and every single one of them is going to make it." The relief that washed over me was so total, so absolute, that I thought my legs would give out. It was a physical wave that started in my head and washed all the way down to my boots, taking the strength from my limbs. I put my head in my hands, and for the first time since Sarah's funeral, I cried. Not loud, just silent, racking sobs of a man who had seen too much, but had for one day managed to push back the darkness. The story of the Asphalt Angels, as the local news dubbed them, became a small sensation. The police investigated, but the monster who laid the bait was never found. The dogs, however, became local celebrities. They had no owners, no tags, no microchips. They were a pack, a family of strays, seemingly abandoned to their fate. The local shelter was overwhelmed by the sheer number of them and the cost of their ongoing care. Word travels fast in a small town. It moves quicker than gossip and with more conviction than the truth. Within 2 days, the story of the Asphalt Angels was on everyone's lips in Clarksville. It started as a whisper at Dr. Evans's clinic, spread to the grocery store, and found its way to the VFW post. I hadn't said a thing, but people pieced things together. My beat-up old truck, a bloodied 70-year-old veteran showing up at an animal hospital. It didn't take a detective to connect the dots. Then, as I'd feared, the outside world came knocking. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was on the porch cleaning my old hunting rifle, a ritual that settled my nerves when an unfamiliar sedan pulled into my gravel driveway. A young kid got out, no more than 25, wearing a collared shirt that was a little too neatly pressed for the country. He carried a notepad and an eager smile that I instantly disliked. "Mr. Jensen," he called out, approaching. "My name's Tim Fellows from the Clarksville Gazette. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about what happened on Tuesday." I laid the rifle slowly across my lap, never taking my eyes off him. "I don't have anything to say." He paused, his smile faltering slightly. "Sir, people are calling you a hero. What you did was extraordinary. The town wants to know. The town doesn't need to know a damn thing." I cut him off, my voice low and rough like the gravel under his shoes. There's no story here. Some dogs were in trouble and I helped them. End of story. Now you're on my private property. He tried again, changing tactics. But the dogs, sir. The clinic is overwhelmed. A story in the paper could help raise donations, find them homes, then write a story about the dogs, I said, getting to my feet. The ache in my back flared up like a silent alarm. Write about Dr. Evans and her team. They're the real heroes. You leave my name out of it. I didn't do what I did for a medal or to get my picture in your paper. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Some things are not for sale and they're not for headlines. Now get off my property. He finally got the message. He retreated, got in his car, and drove away, leaving behind a cloud of dust and my precious silence. I wasn't a hero. Heroes were kids with mud-caked faces who never came home. I was just a stubborn old man who couldn't stand the thought of leaving those dogs to die alone. The young reporter, however, was smart. He did exactly what I told him. That Sunday, the article ran on the front page of the Gazette. The headline read, "Mysterious Good Samaritan Rescues 16 Poisoned Angels." The story detailed the dog's plight, the tireless work of Dr. Evans, and the urgent need for funds and adoptive homes. It only mentioned a local veteran who wishes to remain anonymous. And then a remarkable thing happened. It wasn't a viral internet storm. It was something slower, deeper, and more real. It was a community response. The phones at the clinic rang off the hook. People started showing up, not with cameras, but with open wallets and open hearts. Local farmers dropped off bags of dog food on the clinic's doorstep. A church ladies group held a bake sale and gave every last dollar to Dr. Evans. At the VFW post, my old comrades passed a hat and raised hundreds of dollars for Gunner's dogs. Local businesses sent checks. It was a quiet, steady tide of decency, a community taking care of its own. The donations covered all the medical bills and then some. Then came the adoption applications. Families came to the clinic not to see a hero, but to meet the survivors. Dr. Evans and her staff vetted them carefully, making sure every last one of the asphalt angels would go to a home where they would be safe and loved forever. Within 2 months, every kennel was emptying out. One by one, the dogs left for their new lives. All except one. All that time, I'd been making my own visits to the clinic. I didn't go through the front door. I'd park Old Blue around back and slip in through the staff entrance. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to see them. I'd stand quietly in the back of the recovery area and watch. I saw them regain their strength, saw their tails begin to wag again, saw the trust begin to return to their eyes. But my gaze always drifted to one kennel in particular. In it was the young German Shepherd pup, the one whose teeth marks I carried on my forearm on the worst day of his life. He was the weariest of the bunch, the most skittish. When other people approached his kennel, he would shrink into the corner. But when I came near, he would walk to the gate. He didn't lick or jump. He just stood there, watching me with his deep, serious eyes, and I would watch him back. We had a bond, a silent understanding forged in pain and fear on the side of that road. One afternoon, Dr. Evans found me there. All the other kennels were empty. Only the pup remained. "He's the last one," she said softly. "We've had a few applications, but he won't connect with anyone. He just stares at them. But when you're here, he's calm." I stuck my fingers through the wire mesh. He came forward and gently nudged his muzzle against them. Dr. Evans smiled, a tired, knowing smile. "I think he's been waiting for you, Gunner. I think he's already picked his home." I'm looking at him now. He's lying at my feet right here on the porch, his heavy head resting on my boot. He's bigger now, his legs and ears no longer so comically oversized, though he's still growing into them. He's a handsome young German Shepherd, loyal, smart, and full of life. Every now and then he licks the faint silvery scars on my forearm, The ones his puppy teeth put there on the worst day of his life. I named him Scout, because a good scout always looks out for his man. I saved 16 dogs that day. That's what the story people whisper says. But in the quiet moments when Scout rests his head on my knee and looks up at me with those trusting brown eyes, I know the real truth. They saved me too. They gave an old Marine, a man who thought his duty was done, a new mission. There's no internet channel to share or subscribe to. There is no fame or recognition. And that's how it should be, because what I learned that day, and what Scout reminds me of every day, is that an act of kindness doesn't need an audience. Duty doesn't require applause. The world doesn't need more heroes on television looking for attention. It needs something much simpler. The world needs more people who stop. Don't forget to subscribe. The Animals 2.0 YouTube F Family.